change our names to anything in particular?
It's too late.
Whatever you're
Forever
comfortable.
Too late now.
Just
Change.
be yourself.
Okay. I'll try.
Right. Take it away, Al.
I'm used to hearing this meeting is being recorded. Greetings, and welcome to Performance Check, our after show for the D20 Initiative, all about our players and our world that we have created, and just kind of discussing it and figuring out what went well, what people were surprised by, things like that. So, I am of course Alan, and we have with us the DM Jen, Sarah, who played Zrill, Curt, who played Ant, Gerardo, who played, or Justin, who played Gerardo. I just think of you as Gerardo. And we have Emma, who was running sound. And my name is Alan. I was the MC for this particular adventure. So I'm going to throw it to our DM first, because this is a question that always interests me personally. What were some actions the PCs did this time that took you by surprise?
Well, I mean, there's the obvious one. Let's just talk about the obvious one that we're all thinking about how you threw Flash to his death to be eaten.
Locked him in with a live chimera.
Yeah.
An immovable rod and took off. That one was awesome. That was probably the most surprising. So we'll just put that on the table. I thought that there was some, as we experienced the magic effects in social settings, perhaps for really at least the most intensely in this episode that we have yet. Having to choose targets was fantastically surprising each time, all the way from picking on good old Terry from translation to your buddies or Bookmaster Soka. That was a touching moment, literally. So,
was there anything that I know a little bit. I've DM'd a couple times, very, very briefly with some friends, but I know oftentimes you have a lot of things planned out. You're like, okay, here's where hopefully they'll go, then here, then here. Was there any vast left turns that you had to kind of corral them back in, as it were, as sometimes DMs have to what's the word that's used sometimes for DMs?
Putting people on the rails?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Because this format is a lot more on the rails than maybe other, home games or just even other types of styles of play. I designed this as a bit of a challenge for myself and for you guys to be in a fairly open environment. And so thankfully you stayed in the Coliseum, and things like that happened. So I had worked out, a series of NPCs, just didn't know what order you would engage with them or how much you engage with what was happening in the arena. The whole underground, there's a lot down there that you didn't engage with that you might have. So that was one thing, but I also made it hopefully big enough, and we filled up the amount of time that you exploring up top and talking to the NPCs there, and then the tent situation with, also gathering around Bookmaster Soka to your side and using NPCs within that. I didn't know what combinations of people would be involved in what. So that was how this one was designed. There were literally walls of the Coliseum around you that thankfully you stayed within, but I didn't know what was going to happen inside there.
Well, that brings me to a question I have for Ant. It seems that your character, and the party in general, but your character I noticed personally, specifically, was doing their best to avoid causing a scene at the Coliseum. There wasn't a lot of outright trying to draw attention to yourselves, that kind of thing. How do you think you did overall? How do you think you handled that whole tricky situation?
Well, I think it started out okay. It got a little away from us when some of the magic effects came into play with like the squeaking and the bugs that were coming out from underneath my robes. But like ultimately for Ant, I think the most challenging aspect of it was that I feel like Ant has almost a borderline bit of a crush on Bookmaster Soka. And so to have to lie initially was really difficult. And I didn't like that aspect of it, but in order to, to keep our the secrets that we already had, for the safety of everyone, really, that's why I went down that road. But boy, was I ever glad when she joined in and came with us. I was like, please don't be the corrupted one. That would crush poor Ant's soul.
Oh.
Yeah, I definitely felt a huge sense of relief coming from you when you realize, because then you were able to kind of like say to them, oh, here's why I had to lie to you.
Yes,
There's someone
yeah.
here, and you're able to unburden yourselves as it. Yeah.
Can I add
Yeah,
two
of course.
things? Okay, one, thankfully, I mean, there were some scenarios where I was like a big scene that you could have caused that you didn't. For instance, like the crowd stayed generally unaware of what happened, and they left and didn't really see your confrontation with Smo and Flash up on the box seat, right? But like scenarios, even like Flash had an amplifying device. Like I picture, like, what if you guys took it and like told the whole of Candlekeep that like
Oh,
they were
yeah.
in danger or something? Like I don't know. Like I thought, what if you did things like that? What am I going to do? Anyway, so at least, I mean, you made scenes with certain individuals, but the
Well,
other thing,
Terry, of course,
Yeah.
Harry's,
Or
yeah,
when
Harry's
Alpha
never going to
Terry.
be the same.
that's exactly what I was going to say.
Well, and honestly, Jen, like that was kind of in the back of my mind as a player was I knowing sort of what we knew, I didn't want to create a panic. So that's why I was saying we need to like get to Schmo as quickly as we can so we can find out some way of dealing with the situation without alerting too much attention to the average Candlekeeper.
Yep.
There still needs to be a respect for that hierarchy, and if we were to like throw that out there, I think it would have absolutely created chaos.
And then the other thing, which maybe I should have said during the episode, I wanted to make a moment to kind of acknowledge that several episodes back, like I think in the original Candlekeep arc, there was a headphones off moment.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I had the audience roll, and they were told that what they were rolling for was randomly what bookmaster is going to be corrupted because of the time that you had spent doing other things. And that, in fact, determined who was going to be corrupted and the setting for this. So it could have been Bookmaster Soka, but
Thank goodness. That would have been a hard one.
Had you guys not gone back and listened to the headphones off moment?
Oh, I was doing sound that night, and so I got to hear what was going on because I was tuning in, and it was so great.
Yeah, I totally went back and listened.
No, I definitely
moment.
this was when Derry was there too, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that, and I remember to myself I was saying, I don't want to know what that secret is. Like,
Yeah.
I want to be able to RP my character as much as I can, with honesty, as it were. Not that I'm saying you're not honest, Emma.
No, I'm not. I'm a dirty cheater, and I will win Dungeons and Dragons.
That's right.
That was why
currently,
I made it that even if you listened, you wouldn't know who it was,
No.
right? Just what was,
right. Just what the role was about, or what the
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious as well because I feel this is for Zrill. I feel like your character's very gung ho. Let's smash things. So how do you think Zrill felt about this whole situation with a bit more subterfuge and a bit more sneakiness rather than just go in and smash things with your warhammer.
Yeah, not her strength, I'm gonna say, sneaking around. But it kind of, as the episode was going, I was thinking more about like the backstory I'd created for Zro, which was like her family didn't want her to be a fighter. She wanted to be a knight. They said no, so she just trained in secret for a long time. And even now when she's off, it's like it's a lie to her family. Like, no, I'm just a librarian, totally not fighting, just learning about stuff. And then she's actually out here fighting. So I think it's the longer she's been away from home, the harder it is to put it back in the box. And she was going to something like, she's been trying to get into the Coliseum since she first got to Candlekeep, and it hasn't happened. So that she got to go to the Coliseum, she got to see Flash Gordo do a really cool demonstration with the cool creature. Like, she was just very, very excited the whole time. And she like knew it was like we kind of been sworn to secrecy so much by Lumen that it was like, okay, don't really talk about this stuff. But I don't know, she's always down to hit something with her hammer. Very excited.
I mean, and we saw that with once Gordo was bound. You know, he still just really wanted to hit him.
Yeah, it's kind of just my go-to. I didn't really like Ant had him, so I was like, what do I do? He's grappled, he's bound. I don't really know.
Does not compute.
Yeah, like I could shoot him with lightning, but that seems worse. Yeah, it was really like getting carried away with the whole fight. Is like the fight and thinking of like the big picture of like, oh no, this person is corrupted. We have to take care of it, and I don't know what to do. And like they're gonna break free again because they had already broken free. So then like throwing them in the thing with the Chimera, like getting wound up by Gerardo, who's like, that's a good idea. I'm like, okay, good. And then doing it, and then really like even me, Sarah, didn't realize until after I'd done it, like, oh no, this is Zrill's like idol here. She's been like the way that Ant has a crush on Ahsoka, like Zrill has just been like idolizing Flash Gordo and wanting to work with him, and then she threw him to a Chimera. So I think that's gonna take a bit of a toll.
A little bit of time to unpack that one.
You guys, I loved that when you decided to cast Sleep. It like even then you were thinking that you were gonna be putting Gordo to sleep, not the Chimera.
I wasn't sure.
Oh, he won't suffer.
It was so funny in that moment. Like, I think from the outside, like DM and us watching, we're like, okay, now they put the Chimera to sleep, so everything is fine. But then you were all like, no.
I mean, I honestly, because I mentioned this in the chat as well as we were watching, but someone early in the fight was like, I wish one of us had sleep. And then, cut to 10 minutes later, and Jen is like, well, I can cast sleep.
Yeah. Bookmaster Soka's like, oh yeah, I got that one up my sleeve.
Yeah, why didn't you ask me? But when you as the players were saying, I wish someone had sleep, I definitely thought you meant to put Gordo to sleep. So I was on that side, whereas Emma, it sounds like, was on the side of the DM of like, no, put the Chimera, the scary monster, to sleep, not the helpless goblin.
I had a concern that Gordo was going to do something to the Chimera, or somehow like, I didn't know his animal handling seemed like it would probably be off the charts. And if we just put the Chimera to sleep, then he would be able to control it to get out of the cell. So it was just like all these steps. Like I genuinely was like, he's not going to die. The Chimera will just like guard him. And it didn't happen that way.
Yeah. Well, that's
bound.
Yeah, but he's
threw them
out of the bind once already. So slippery goblin.
That does bring me to another question. This is for anybody, really. But how do you think the party felt about the ultimate demise of Flash Gordo? Do you think that there's going to be some sadness? Do you think? I mean, Zrill, it seems like already has expressed that. But the other characters, what do you think? Are you okay with this goblin being eaten by a Chimera?
Gerardo.
Well, Gerardo is like always playing the game to get ahead. Like, I mean, yesterday specifically, I mean, he was being still affected by the fog from the basement, so he was a little unhinged for his normal self, and it might have been a bit far for Gerardo on an average day, but not too far for Gerardo overall. Like, that's like, well, one less bookmaster, somebody new to manipulate coming in, I guess.
I like your commitment to the fact that Gerardo has had his intelligence eaten away.
I was just like, what decision would he actually make? And then, what's the one slightly worse decision he can make?
What about you, Ant? Do you think how do you feel about Gordo?
I mean, ultimately, I like throughout the entire episode last night, Ant was trying to avoid confrontation on a physical level as much as possible. It was only because of the squeak that I think combat ensued. From my perspective, maybe Jen had other plans, but I was doing everything I possibly could to try and avoid it, because I felt like if we could somehow subdue both of them, that we might be able to undo what had already happened and have the real Bookmaster Soka and Schmo back. So that was sort of the game plan that I was mapping out in my head. So the loss of Flash Gordo's hard.
So I had another question here. This is for Gerardo. We've noticed a bit of a change in him because of the fog, but also I feel this episode, in thanks partly to some errant magic, perhaps, we've seen Gerardo express some interesting emotions that we haven't really seen. Do you think that will carry through in his character? Do you think the errant, he just kind of tosses it off as errant magic and doesn't think about it?
I think Gerardo has been isolated for a long time, and now that he's a part of this sort of party group going around, there's been some softening. Like, I think the fact that him and Zrill have like the dragon draconic thing in common, that he's like, oh, that like a common interest is good. You know, Derry saved his life, and he's like, oh, that's weird. And that was like, so, you know, there was like, even though he didn't really like Derry at the beginning, it's like, there's a little bit of like, his heart goes out to Derry a little, and then, I don't know, Ant just kind of gets his way in there. Like,
well, you know, I feel like
two hugs,
man. I think our relationship is moving in a direction that is beneficial to everybody.
I agree. You know, he's not going to be accepting of everyone immediately, but they stick around. He might warm up to them a little. He's growing in his old age.
But I guess just as a final kind of question to the group, is there anything else you wanted to kind of like point out as like a moment or an idea that you really that was really memorable for you in this game?
So we have Terry the translator, and we have Derry the translator.
Correct.
Jen, are all translators? Do they all rhyme?
That's an interesting question.
I will say that was the first thought when she said Terry. I actually thought she said Jen said Derry. I was like, is she bringing my character into this like as a random NPC? Like, that's weird. But then I realized it was Terry, and I'm like, that's very funny. And I hope that most translators have a similar name.
I never liked Jerry the translator.
We'll see how that goes.
So many, you know.
I mean, I will say that like that aspect for me, again, as someone watching, the random NPC that suddenly like has this whole kind of like character brought out, in this case via random errant magic things, is one of my favorite things in D&D. You know, when especially when as a DM you're like, because this happens in games I've played before, where it's like, oh, what's your name to an NPC, and you can clearly the DM was not ready for that, and they make up a name on the spot, and it's usually awesome, and then that person becomes very important. It's great. So I'm pulling for Terry myself.
9 times out of 10, it's like the DM will actually like create an NPC and puts all this like backstory in them, and the players are like, yeah, okay, cool, thanks, see ya. And then, you know, somebody in a bar that they meet is like, what's his name?
Yeah.
You come up with the name, and they're like fascinated and flushes out this huge story around this NPC that you thought was like completely a nobody.
Yep. Absolutely.
I saw some commentary about that phenomenon, and one of the reasons why is that you guys have a role, like you created them, so you kind of like have, like you were there at the inception, so you have this sort of ownership, and they become way more important than the one that was just the DMs.
That makes sense.
Anything
go ahead.
Folks were wishing had gone differently?
Good question.
Well, I mean, aside from the obvious that I sort of already stated, was that I kind of hoped we didn't have to kill Flash Gordo, or, well, we haven't killed Schmo Spider Whisk yet, but like
The hands are after her.
Yeah.
That was a cool move.
That was so cool.
Yeah, that was a cool choice to pull that out of the bag.
I mean, I still don't know if anything's happening with it, but I assume that they're near me. I mean, with a name like Schmo Spider Whisk, kind of knew that they were going to be bad, right? Like,
But a name like Bookmaster Flash Gordo, like that's a hero's name.
yeah,
That
did
is-
not expect him, but was always suspicious of Smo.
Right, the corruption always goes right to the top. Like she
Yeah.
is always going to be involved.
Let's give a rose to Jen for the names of your NPCs, which
Mhm.
has
Yes.
landed really strongly. Like I feel like I could tell you all of the bookmasters right now.
Yeah.
I
Memorable. Yeah.
yeah, it's really good.
I wish we had seen what happened if the banner had sent the frog after Gerardo. I was really
Oh yeah.
like, oh.
I forgot to mention the banner, who I loved.
Yeah.
It was so silly and whimsical. Like, oh.
And Jen, when you were trying to explain, like, and then Tootie would look, well, like this actually, like right here.
Yeah. Oh, and one of my favorite moments was Jen DMing while doing the wave.
Yeah.
That was
Fun
absolutely
That was
priceless.
so good.
Yeah.
It worked really well. Sometimes like I was like trying to like characterize an NPC, right? And so it's really fun for there to be things happening around you that like you guys brought up. Like the wave was a player idea. I think was that Kelvin's?
It was
Yeah.
Calvin.
It was like, what do you do?
And-
I start the wave.
Yeah, that was so great. And so that gave just like a whole context for Takati to be doing his like, you know, somewhat academic, you know, we really need to like look into the linguistic shifts that are happening amongst the Eladrin in the Feywild. But while he's doing the wave, like,
Wave, yeah.
and he's supposed to be
So
sort
good.
of like he's the likable nerd of the bookmasters, except for Derry. Everybody else likes Takati, and so it gave like I thought a really nice context for him.
Yeah.
I also love that it was a persuasion check to perform the wave, where because then in my mind it's like a physical persuasion, like you have to do it
Yeah.
good enough to, you know, come on everyone, like come on, let's do the wave. Yeah, which was great. I loved it.
It's hard to get the wave going. It's really impressive
It
when you
is.
can do it.
Well then, thanks for chatting with us, everyone. And we'll be back on February 1st with the next episode.
That's
So,
true.
yes, I don't know how to sign off.
Me neither. I like the slow trail off myself.
I think you did already.
I could just turn my camera off and then
Yeah.
you'd all have to.
Yeah.
Could we all roll a performance check? Like-
Yeah.